Open source has been adopted by 89% of companies using AI. Google's major outage is explained. Starlink satellite to phone is coming, but it's not cheap. And the hidden bottleneck that could stall renewable energy. Welcome to Hashtag Trending. I'm your host, Jim Love. Let's get into it. A new Linux Foundation study reveals that open source AI is democratizing access to AI, and the impact could be enormous. According to the report, 89% of organizations using AI have adopted open source models in some form. Nearly two-thirds already use open models, and 76% plan to increase adoption. So why this surge in interest? Well, the reason is simple: economics. Two-thirds of organizations report that open source AI costs less to deploy than proprietary alternatives. Research shows that companies would have spent 3.5 times more on software than they currently do without open source alternatives. But here's a twist. Smaller businesses are actually leading adoption, not the tech giants grabbing headlines. They're choosing open source AI at higher rates than large enterprises. Harvard's Frank Nagel explains why. He says, prior research has shown that open source can substantially benefit small businesses and startups, particularly due to its lower costs than related proprietary software. Open source AI will allow these resource-constrained companies to more fully benefit from cutting-edge technologies and will help them keep pace in competitive markets. This creates a paradox. As AI becomes more powerful, it's becoming more accessible. The study points to billions in potential value across healthcare, manufacturing, energy, and agriculture, where open models provide the flexibility needed for direct operational integration. The report also calls into question the predictions of widespread job losses with the adoption of AI, at least in the short run. The report says that while 95% of surveyed hiring managers over the past 2 years do not plan to reduce headcount due to AI, the report also warns that specific sectors will see cuts. AI will decrease headcount in service operations and supply chain over the next 3 years, and some jobs face greater exposure than others. The study also reveals significant resistance in key sectors. In energy, companies may reject open source AI because the novel application of AI is a significant differentiator for those managing the distribution and control of energy. As a result, these entities may wish to remain proprietary as a form of competitive advantage. I'm going to interject on this one, though, because unless you're doing specific software that you develop and no one else does, you're going to be contributing, whether you're buying a commercial package or whether you're using open source. Both of them will benefit from your knowledge in one aspect or another. So, despite the adoption rate, the researchers admit to significant evidence gaps in understanding open source AI's true economic impact and are calling for more rigorous studies to measure actual returns on investment. The reasons for Google's major cloud outage last week are surfacing, and it appears that human error or a failure in QA processes are at the root of the problem. Google's outage lasted over 3 hours, from 10:49 a.m. to 3:49 p.m. Eastern Time. That, in itself, is troublesome, because it also brought down not just core Google services like Gmail, Calendar, and Drive, but it also crippled a wide range of third-party platforms: Spotify, Discord, Snapchat, NPM, Firebase Studio. All of these experienced disruptions. And here's what makes this incident particularly troubling. The root cause was entirely preventable. Google revealed the outage stemmed from an invalid automated quota update to our API management system, which was distributed globally, causing external API requests to be rejected. The company admitted this happened because it lacked effective testing and error handling systems to catch the invalid data before it propagated worldwide. Where have we heard this story before? This explains why recovery took so long. Google had to bypass the faulty quota system entirely, and even then, some regions remained affected for hours longer. The ripple effects extended far beyond Google's own services, hitting major platforms that millions rely on daily. Discord users couldn't access their communities, Spotify subscribers lost their music streaming, and developers found NPM package management completely disrupted. Cloudflare also saw its workers' KV service affected, with the company explaining that part of this infrastructure is backed by a third-party cloud provider, which experienced an outage today and directly impacted the availability of our KV service. Google issued the standard corporate apology. We are deeply sorry for the impact to all of our users and their customers that this service disruption/outage caused. Businesses, large and small, trust Google Cloud with your workloads, and we will do better. However, this incident is not just about Google. It highlights a growing concern about cloud concentration risk. A number of companies are starting to question the idea of using large hyperscalers because of cost. But now there's another factor to consider. If you have a few companies with such a huge scope of services, the impacts, even of a 3-hour outage, can be enormous. And when a single provider's API management system fails, it doesn't just affect that company. It creates a domino effect across countless businesses and services that have built their operations on that foundation. And given the CrowdStrike failure last year, with almost the same footprint, a global release set out without proper training that rippled through the entire supply chain and a number of companies, you would think that we would have had better processes in place from a company like Google. And maybe it's just impossible. Maybe companies that have this size and reach will always be capable of causing a global outage. In which case, we need to think about this strategically, because lessons learned are only lessons learned if something is actually done about what's learned. SpaceX's satellite-to-phone service is coming, but it's not going to be cheap. T-Mobile became the first carrier to reveal what customers will pay for Starlink direct-to-cell, ending speculation about costs for staying connected anywhere. The service lets any compatible smartphone send text through SpaceX's Starlink constellation without cell tower coverage, but it's only texts for now. Data capability may come later as SpaceX expands beyond its current satellites. The service does appear to be perfect for backcountry adventures or rural dead zones where traditional cell service fails. And a key point is that the service works on existing smartphones without modifications, supporting iPhone 14 and later, Samsung Galaxy S24 series, and Google Pixel 8 and 9 series. And the timing is strategic. iPhone 14 and now some recent Android phones offer emergency SOS via satellite for free for 2 years after activation. But for iPhone 14 users, that free period ends in November 2025. None of the providers, including Apple or Android, have announced pricing for continued service, potentially opening the door for these carrier alternatives. Unlike emergency-only services, direct-to-cell lets you text anyone, and it's aiming to be the default service for cell phones. A T-Mobile spokesperson said, "We've worked closely with Apple and Google to make T-Mobile Starlink the default satellite connection on their smartphones." And although pricing is just emerging, the service doesn't appear to be very cheap, at least in comparison to other text services. The good news is T-Mobile's beta is currently free for everyone until July 2025, but after the launch, Starlink will be priced at $15 a month for T-Mobile customers and $20 a month for Verizon AT&T customers. First responders get a significant break. Agencies on T-priority plans receive T-Mobile Starlink at no extra cost. Other premium plans may also have this bundled in. In Canada, Rogers, who is going to be providing the service, has not yet announced pricing, but based on the U.S. equivalents, unlimited monthly would be somewhere around $20 to $30 Canadian. The world's clean energy transition could be slowed not by lack of wind or sun, by challenges of energy storage when wind and sun aren't available, or even politicians who seem to be resisting it, but by something more mundane, a shortage of cables to connect them to the grid. The clean energy revolution has indeed hit an unexpected roadblock: not enough cables. While many governments, with the possible exception of the U.S. and the province of Alberta in Canada, are announcing ambitious renewable targets, and tech companies are building massive solar farms, a critical supply chain bottleneck threatens to derail the entire transition. High voltage cables are the invisible arteries of modern power grids, carrying electricity from remote wind farms to cities hundreds of miles away. These aren't ordinary wires, they're engineering marvels. The cables are as thick as a person's torso and designed to withstand crushing ocean pressure and carry the equivalent of an entire nuclear reactor's output. The cables are as thick as a person's torso, designed to withstand crushing ocean pressure and carry the equivalent of an entire nuclear reactor's output. And the problem? Well, for one, the factories that make these cables are booked solid for years. NKT CEO Claes Westerlin warns that demand has exploded as 80 to 90% of new large-scale projects now use high-voltage direct current HVDC technology for long-distance transmission. The scale of the challenge of meeting demand is staggering. The International Energy Agency said meeting global clean energy goals requires building 80 million kilometers of new grid infrastructure by 2040, doubling what took a century to build, but in just 15 years. Yet here's the challenge. Cable manufacturers won't expand capacity without massive guarantees. Building a new factory costs upwards of $1 billion or more, and companies remember getting burned a decade ago when anticipated demand failed to materialize. For a company like us to do investments in the realm of $1 or $2 billion, it's a massive commitment, Westerlin explained. It's also a massive amount of demand that is needed for this investment to actually make financial sense over the next not 5 years, not 10 years, but over the next 20 to 30 years. The manufacturing process itself creates barriers. These cables require towering vertical factories and precision engineering. An impurity as small as an eyelash can cause catastrophic failure that knocks out power to entire cities. Only a handful of companies worldwide possess the expertise, creating what analysts call a deep moat for new entrants. Geopolitical tensions complicate matters further. China has built more HVDC lines than anyone, but Western manufacturers maintain technical advantages. Some governments are attempting anticipatory investments, committing to buy cable capacity before projects are finalized, but these remain exceptions. Just a note to our Canadian Prime Minister, who is looking for mega projects to make Canada an energy superpower, maybe electrical pipeline capability is what is needed. And that's our show. Love to hear from you. You can reach us at editorial@technewsday.ca and check out our new improved website at technewsday.ca or .com. Take your pick. We've done a lot for a tiny band of independent tech journalists, and we could really use your support. Please consider going to buymeacoffee.com, tech podcast, and, well, yeah, you know what? Just buy me a coffee and maybe a donut. And if you are a company, please, please, please think about sponsorship. If we had some additional funding, I could add a few more great journalists that could be telling your story and others to Canadians and around the world. So if you are a company or if you work for a company, pass us on to your marketing department. Say, hey, take a look at this. They can find a way to reach me on our site at technewsday.ca, or they can go to buymeacoffee.com/techpodcast and buy us a couple cases of beer. How could you be more Canadian than that? I'm your host, Jim Love. Have a marvelous Monday.